Welcome to the Your Brilliant Difference podcast. We are on episode 153, and I've got a special treat for you all. Now, this episode is going to be really juicy, especially for you entrepreneurs that and course creators and workshop facilitators and who are looking to take their teachings, their courses online. But I will say also, if you don't fall into that audience, you're going to get a whole lot out of this conversation because you're also going to learn how Caitlin Bacher uncovered her brilliant difference and used it to build a multiple seven-figure business. So we'll dive in just a moment. Let me just say hello to Caitlin. Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and I'm excited to speak with you and your audience.
Likewise. So let me give you a little bit of a backdrop on Caitlin so you have a sense of where she's come from. And an agenda of what we're going to talk about today. Caitlin Bacher is the CEO of Scale with Success, a company dedicated to teaching coaches and course creators how to turn their online course into a seven-figure business without launching. I know what that is like, so I can't wait to talk to you about that. Her company has rapidly grown to listen to this, guys, $11 million in revenue in the last few years. And thankfully, it's not slowing down. No slowdown in sight here. A chance encounter with a new friend revealed a completely different approach to selling Caitlin's course. Caitlin, when I learned that, I can't wait to hear what that was. And I'm sure you're going to share that with us. That allowed her to generate consistent revenue from her course and build momentum that she needs to scale her business with success. Once she made the switch from launching to selling, which is what we also love to do more of, especially selling from love. Her course was on autopilot, and she was able to make her first $1 million in 9 months, and by just selling one of these online courses. She now teaches this method to course creators all around the world. So before we dive in, let me give you a little lay of the land. We're going to talk about launching versus selling, what's the difference and why we need to lean on selling a bit more. We'll talk about the mindset shift. Again, focused and geared more to entrepreneurs, but I'll say even for those of you in the corporate workplace, you're going to get lots out of this to really understand that mindset shift that you need to also embrace to step into your leadership role in your organization. We'll talk about what's the difference between selling a new product course that flops versus making millions? So how do we make that switch? And how Caitlin developed a successful business, and how does she show up in her brilliant difference that allowed her to get to the $11 million plus and growing stage? So I can't wait to have this conversation with you. Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So why don't you give us a little bit of a backdrop on who you are, where you come from, and maybe a little bit about your business, and then we'll start talking about all those juicy details that we preempted our conversation with already.
Yeah, sure. So my first taste of business was when I decided to to freelance as a social media manager. And so when I first started coaching and consulting, it was around the topic of social media because my experience was social media management. And then after that, I got into selling courses because I realized during those one-on-one coaching and consulting calls, I was pretty much saying the same thing on every single call. And I noticed that even though people had different businesses, the problems they were experiencing with social media were very similar. So over the years, I've sold different products, everything from teaching people how to do Pinterest, how to do Instagram, how to do Facebook groups, and then now, of course, how to sell with an Evergreen model.
Awesome. So you really leaned into what you knew, what you had expertise in, and leveraged that, and noticed a need also in the marketplace, that there was this thing that you kept talking about, and then figured out how to make it that you can help more people, maybe all at the same time in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what inspired you? I think about, I spent a lot of my career in corporate, but I felt like an entrepreneur inside an organization. And then making that leap, it's been almost a decade ago, but making that leap to start my small business, it is nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
How did you know? How did you know? Like, what was the impetus for you to start your business?
Well, I think for me, it really got to a point where I had a young daughter. She was 2 years old at the time, and I felt like if I felt like if I continued down the path that I was on, I just wasn't going to have the time freedom that I wanted in order to uh, in order to reach my revenue goals, but also spend time with my family. And I remember there were these, and it sounds kind of funny when I say that because I'm sure some of your listeners know when you take that step to then start your own business, it is a lot of work. So if like, time freedom can be something that you want in the long term, but it's definitely something that you may struggle with when you're first starting your business. I definitely remember, like I was we were potty training my daughter, and I remember doing on the phone like consulting calls at the same time as I like held her little hand while she was trying to use the bathroom, and we were just like going through all the, it was definitely a lot happening. But over
The things that
time,
people, I just interrupt you there. I go, the things that people don't know that might be happening on
yeah.
the other side of that
So
conversation.
true.
So I'm guessing it wasn't a Zoom call. It was literally a
No, it
physical
was
phone
not.
conversation.
And that was there was a specific reason why I was not doing Zoom calls.
Yeah.
This
Yeah. I
has to
totally
be
get that.
phone. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about how long have you been in business? What
Mhm.
was that journey like? And if we can get sort of that snapshot of that pivot point for you where you had that person kind of give you,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I constantly, I believe insight and those breakthroughs and those aha moments are so pivotal. They're really difficult to orchestrate, but when we have them, like they change the game for everything. So maybe
Mhm.
talk a bit about when you started your business. So we have that sense of how
Yeah.
it started, but the journey a little bit to get to 11 million.
Mhm.
But also in between there, what was the transformation point for you?
Yeah, so I was definitely, I kind of listened to uh listening to people around me who were constantly telling me, you need to launch. This is the best way to grow your business and to increase revenue is through launching. So I was definitely stuck in that launch cycle where you know all of my revenue was dependent on a 1 or 2 week long launch. And so it was high risk, high stress. Revenue would spike up and then it would kind of go down. And despite all of that, I didn't know any other way. I wasn't even aware that there were alternative models to sell my programs that would enable me to step away from launching. And so I ended up joining a mastermind where there were a lot of different course creators in all kinds of different niches. And it's funny because I went there to get better at launching. But nevertheless, one of the guys that I met in there, he was selling a course that he had created that was all about how to declutter your home. And he was making over $300,000 per month without launching. So when I learned that, it cracked open like a brand new vision for my company that I never even thought was possible. I was like, what? Well, what is happening here? So he literally like walked me through everything. He was so generous. He opened his spreadsheets. He was like, and here's the revenue that we made yesterday, and here's what we made last week, and da 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 da. And in that moment, I knew that I had found my new way that I wanted to grow and scale my business. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. Wasn't sure how I was going to exactly how I was going to go about doing it. But just knowing that one person had done it before me, I thought, well, if he can do it, I can definitely do it.
Okay. And I think I want to just kind of point out, even as you're listening to us having this conversation, I too, I remember a long time ago, I had, this dream of having this business that I got to work from wherever I lived. I didn't have to be in a big city. I could live out in the country where I live right
Yeah.
now. And it wasn't until I caught a video that I watched off of Facebook. It was like this little ad that really mirrored what like the image of my family, what
Mhm.
we were looking to do. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, if they can do it, it all of a sudden says, it gives us this, then I can do it. Why couldn't I do it? And so
Mhm.
that sense of having role models or inspiration points outside of us. And so if you're feeling a little bit stuck, if you're not sure where to go find people that inspire you, that you get excited about, that you want to be doing maybe something similar to that. And that, sounds like, Caitlin, that was what was the kind of the catalyst for you.
Yeah, it was for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I was like, I had two questions when you were in that course. One was, what
Yeah.
course were you looking to launch? What was it called? Do you remember?
Oh, it was about Facebook groups.
Oh, cool.
The
Very
course
cool.
was all about Facebook groups. Yeah.
And did you find out if he was selling? And I guess we all can be learning and developing ourselves. What
Yeah.
if he was doing 300K every month? What was he looking to get out of this mastermind or course that,
Just
do you remember?
continuous growth. So
Yeah.
the cool thing was that there were so many people that were doing well and one in that mastermind. And one thing I want to make clear is there is no one right way to do something. So people are making, are having $1 million years from launching. They're having $1 million years from using an evergreen model, $1 million years from selling services, ebooks, like whatever it is. And so it's really a matter of figuring out what works well for you and what kind of aligns with the lifestyle that you want to have. And so there were people in there who were already well past the $1 million mark. And for someone like me who hadn't reached it yet, if I was like, wow, there are actually so many people out here doing it. And I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing. I think it's just this constant, we're always committed to learning, growing, learning, growing. We've never tapped out on that wellspring is always there for us. So let's talk a little bit about, and I'm guessing this is the pivot point that you learned. What is the difference between launching and selling? And
Yeah.
why do we need to focus on selling?
So the biggest difference between launching and evergreen is that typically launching is something that you do a couple times a year. So basically, it requires 2 to 3 months of really intense list building and content distribution leading up to what's called an open cart. And then that open cart period, which can last anywhere between 5 or 7 days, is when you are allowing people to enroll in your coaching program, your course, sign up for services, whatever it is. And then when the cart closes, nobody can buy that product until your next launch begins, or until your next launch open cart period, which could be 4 months later, it might be a year later. And so in the process of doing that, what most course creators find is that as soon as their cart closes and their launch ends, so does all of the momentum that they've been working so hard to generate for their business. So it's like you're in this flurry of activity and then it's just radio silence until the launch cycle begins all over again. And I
Yeah.
remember I had this one friend and he was like, Caitlin, you're not running a business, you're running a promotion. And
Mhm.
it made so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like this, it's like a stop,
Yeah.
go, or like you're open for business and then we're closed for business. We're open for, and I'm just imagining if a regular brick and mortar business opened its doors for a period of time and then closed its doors. Like,
Yeah.
you have a clothing shop. We're open for this period of time and we do all this promotion for you to get in the store and then we shut it and say, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I remember also with launches, the amount of effort, energy, time, like your whole world is a revolving around this launch.
Hmm.
And I don't know about you, Caitlin, but there were moments where my launch was like, I was exhausted before the cart closed.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then I still had to teach the course that I was selling or promoting to teach. And there was just this, okay, this, an energy taker. Like it is very energy expending when you're
Yeah.
doing a launch model.
Yeah. And you're doing all of that work up front. So there's no guarantee that it's even going to convert. Like I remember the first time that I launched that Facebook group course, which was the first course that I ended up generating over $1 million with. And with that Facebook group course, the first time I launched it, I spent about $20,000 to prepare for that launch. That's including like all the ads that I was running. That's including, hiring out contractors for different things. And the launch itself generated $20,000. So I had no money to pay me or the business. And I had a period of time, months, where I had to wait for the next launch cycle to go again. And that's really when I was like, okay, something is wrong. Like, this is really not going to work. And despite that failed launch, it was the very next year when I switched to selling at Evergreen that I was able to make $1 million in 9 months from that
Okay.
exact same course that I had so much trouble selling initially.
Okay. Which is amazing to even have the turnaround happen that quickly for you. So I'd love to hear more about what does the selling model look like in the Evergreen model? And then what do you think helped propel you to success? Because I do know, even if I have an Evergreen course on available and I'm selling it all the time, it doesn't mean everyone is buying it all the time.
That's
So
true.
what helped? We'll talk about the selling and the Evergreen, and then we'll start talking more about what helped people buy it.
Yeah. So when you're selling with an evergreen model, you need to have some kind of conversion mechanism. And that conversion mechanism is not just a sales page that sits on your website, like collecting dust, just you're like hoping and praying that someone's going to enroll, right? And so it looks different. The sales mechanism looks different for different people depending on what you're selling. So if you're selling a one-on-one service, the conversion mechanism for you might be a sales call. So you might be collecting applications, booking appointments, having sales calls. If you're selling something on autopilot, which is the method that I teach for selling courses specifically, you would be directing people to a free masterclass where they would watch the content, get educated, and be able to enroll inside of your program. But I think that one of the key things to making Evergreen work, and to be able to sell consistently and not just be in a place where you're like, oh, I'm just going to put my offer out there and I really hope people start buying 24/7, is really this idea of genuine connection. And there's 3 different ways that I practiced genuine connection and continue to practice it. And so I'd love to be able to share those with your audience.
That would be awesome. I'm excited to hear them.
Okay,
Go for it.
awesome. So when it comes to genuine connection, the very first thing that you need to think about is that in your marketing and in your sales, but specifically in your marketing, you are speaking about problems that your audience is already aware that they have and they want to solve. So you need to be speaking about the problems that your audience is actively looking for on the internet, right? And I think what happens for some business owners is they get stuck in this mode with their marketing where it's almost like they're in an argumentative mode. So they're trying to convince someone about why they have this problem. And so they're creating content and they're creating an experience for people where you're, as a business owner, you're wasting so much time, money, energy on trying to convince someone they have a problem, when instead you should be that creating content that is designed to attract people who already know they have that problem. They're like, yeah, you don't have to say that twice. Like, this is literally me, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
one
I
example,
so agree. Like
yeah,
I think of the Sell from Love model, very similar, where we've got this like client readiness scale and it goes from 1
yes,
to 10. A client on the 8, 9, and 10 is aware that they have a problem. They are also ready to pay and
hmm,
invest in solving that problem. And then there are a couple things we can do to create the invitation and facilitate the conversation for them to say yes to solving that problem and working with you. And that's like that 8, 9, 10. And on the
yes,
other spectrum is that they're somewhere in that 1 to 4 range where they have no clue that they even have a problem, or that this could be
Right.
contributing to why they're unhappy or not successful or not getting the results. And that's where a ton of time goes in investing in marketing to educate, to enlighten, all those things. And one day they might get to a 5, 6, or 7. And that's that sweet spot you're talking about, where they already, like, that 5 might be, I'm aware of a problem, but I'm not yet sure that Caitlin has the solution, right?
Right.
Where a 7 rating would be, I'm aware I have a problem. I know Caitlin has a solution. And now we're going from a 7, 8, or 9. Like, now we're moving them closer to saying, and that's where the sales conversation might be happening, or
Yes.
some of the pieces that the sales page, they finally land on our sales page, and some of the conversation or dialogue we're having on our website with them. And that's that opportunity where we get them. So I'm so with you. I love this about really finding where they are on that spectrum and talking to the one who already is aware of the problem. Are they aware that you have a solution, or there is a bit of education that you have a solution that can help them move forward to where they want to go?
Yeah. And so the way that since we sell on autopilot, we're
Mm-hmm.
not having the sales conversation. It's
It's
the
an
master
online conversation that they're reading. I get it. Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
for it's the same kind of thing though. We're sharing content that's educating people about their problems, that's building connection so that people say, "Oh my gosh, like wow, this is the exact problem that I'm having." Like, and she's explaining it to me, and she's directing people to her free to and I'm directing people to my free masterclass, where then people can learn about more about my specific method, right? And so then they become aware of what makes that solution, special and unique. But genuine connection, if you want to build that genuine connection, it starts with accurately describing the problem that your ideal client is experiencing.
Perfect. What's number 2?
So, number 2 is that you need to investigate why people didn't buy. So, selling is a full contact sport, right? And even if you are, selling on autopilot, you still want to be able to investigate as to why people didn't buy. And one of the things that we always have people do inside of the funnels that we help them build is we have a survey that goes out after after they've seen the masterclass, and like after the buying period is over, and so they're like, we send out a little survey that just says, hey, aside from time or money, why did you decide not to enroll this time around? And the purpose of that survey is for us to flag people who we can then get on the phone with later to better understand why in their head they were thinking, you know what, this program sounds great. And I'm sure it works for other people, but it's not going to work for me because X, Y, or Z. As a business owner, you need to figure out what that X, Y, or Z is. And having that kind of survey go automatically out to everyone in advance. One of the questions also on there is, would you be open to getting on a call with me so I could do a little, bit of market research? Please provide your email. So you're only then emailing people who's already said they would be happy to talk more about you or more to you. And those conversations, you're really going to be able to dig in, because it's true that some people won't be able to enroll in your program, service, whatever it is, because of time or money. However, sometimes people say that because they kind of want to let you down easy. And so they don't want to get into specifics. And so it takes that little bit of rapport building for them to finally open up and be like, okay, well, I would have found the money if da 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 da, but I don't think it's going to work for me because X, Y, or Z. Now, the reality for most course creators is that sometimes your course specifically addresses X, Y, or Z in the program, but for whatever reason, that person that you're talking to had no clue. They weren't aware of that. And so then that's insight for you to know, oh, I need to, in my future sales and marketing, I need to amplify that a little bit more. I need to add this into my message because people are just like not understanding it, and they're thinking it's not for them, but it's totally for them. And so that step of getting on the phone with people and really diving deep is so important, not with the intent to convert them into a sale, although sometimes they do end up buying, but it's not a sales conversation. It is just a market research conversation.
Yeah, I love that. It's like a clarity call too, because it's a
Mm,
clarity on why didn't they think this was the right solution for them. And
yes.
so you as a provider and really wanting to serve and help and figure out how you can create the best experience and best product and solution for them, you understand and get that intel. But what if they miss something? And it's a
Yeah.
clarity call for them too, because now they get a conversation to even get more intel and insight on the solution, the course, the product,
Yep.
and how it could better meet and fit the needs that they're looking. So again, it's a clarity call on both ends. So I love that as another option on creating genuine connection.
Yeah.
What's number 3?
Yeah. So number 3 is to consistently connect with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things that I think happens a lot for people, especially for small business owners, is that, you know, we get kind of overwhelmed with other parts of our business, whether that is delivery or sales or marketing or whatever it is. And that's one of the reasons why, for me, I enjoyed selling with autopilot so much, is because it took the selling piece out of the equation. And so it freed up my time, not to sit on the beach and drink daiquiris, but to then get better at other areas of my business. And being able to connect with your audience on a consistent basis is so important. And it allows you, being able to create that or organic content, whether it's posting on social media or whether you have a podcast or a blog or whatever it is. You have to, there's no avoiding that. Like, you can't just never do it. And the reason why is because your audience, in order to build trust, whether they're hearing from you from social media, email marketing, whatever it is, they need to hear from you consistently, right? Like, we've all heard those numbers of it takes someone, sometimes they say like 5 points of contact or 30 points of contact or whatever it is, to buy. But a point of, but it's as important to get in as many points of contact as you can.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the ones that you're noticing because of the day and age that we're living in and people are overwhelmed, inundated with content? Often it's a place people like social media, people are going to go there
Mm,
to kind of just escape their reality, but it's also a place where people get inundated and they don't want to go in it because it can be overwhelming. What are you noticing with even with AI and the tools and the use and the applications of what's happening with content creation by leveraging AI? What are you noticing is working? Is it social media? Is it email marketing? Is it webinars? Like where we'll continue to have the conversation around
yeah.
course creators. Where do you think they would be best? Where would they get the biggest bang for their buck for investing time, energy, and effort?
So I wish it was only one of those things,
Mm-hmm.
social, email, or, webinars, but it's everything all together. And I think that one of the things that I like to show my clients is the effort that you're putting into social media. It's not as hard as you think. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing a quick, like, 45-second Instagram reel where you're just talking to people, you're educating them about their problems, you're highlighting the mistakes that they might be making, you're dispelling some of the myths, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are doing that in a quick 45-second video, well, that's one piece of content. But you can also strip the audio, put it on some B-roll. That's a second piece of content. You can take your message from that first video, you can put it into a carousel where you're just like repurposing it there. So that's a carousel. So just from speaking in one tiny 45-second clip, you've basically 3x'd the impact. And I'm a big fan of batching things. I know some people are like, I batch a month's worth of content. I cannot do that. That is like too much for me. My brain can't handle it, but I can batch 2 weeks of content at one time. And so for me, it's like, uh, I just sit down, batch the content, and then like I'm ready to go for the next 2 weeks. It can be scheduled, it's dripped out, all of that. And then through that social media, each piece of content on social media is directing people straight to the masterclass. In my case, if you have a service, you would then be directing people straight to book a call with you or apply, whatever step it is that comes first. And I think, and then after that, then of course it's following up with people via email and all of that sort of thing. But it takes time to really tease out that golden thread that kind of connects your product to or service, so whatever you're selling, to the marketing, to the selling, to the delivery. And the best way to tease out that golden thread is repetition. It takes
Mhm.
practice and time, and the only way to it is through it. The only way you're going to get to the golden thread is to go through the haze of posting content that might not sound that good or might be kind of confusing or whatever. And that's okay. It's like, just get through that part so that you can eventually find it.
Okay, awesome. Now, I know your transformation from like 0 to a million happened in a very quick time, but I'd also say that you probably had been building a foundation based on everything that you were doing before
Yeah.
then. Let's say someone was starting today and they've got a low email list, let's say, a couple hundred subscribers,
Mhm.
not a huge following on Instagram or LinkedIn, let's say, or Pinterest. Like again, not, thousands, maybe up
Mhm.
to 1,000. So they're just starting and they've got their course. They've got it on their website. They've built their email sequence, so that the onboarding process, and like, what would be some of the things and how long? And again, I know this is just kind of even maybe looking at your clients and
Yeah.
their average success rate, like how long does it take in order and how much consistency? So,
Yeah.
so what's sort of, I don't know, say from the moment they put their course on the site to then the consistency, the value add, the genuine connection build, what are some of the things that you think would be the most important things to do in order to start seeing, the payback, the clients really starting to benefit from the product that they've created on their
Yeah.
website?
So once people, go through the program, they built out their funnel. We call it a profitable sales engine. They have that built. They start posting on social media to drive traffic to that profitable sales engine. We have different additional follow up funnels and automations that people go through afterwards. So because we want to make sure that you're following up with people and you're not just like, oh, they didn't buy, okay, now they're never going to hear from me again, right? So that kind of thing. I tell people all the time that the first 6 figures in course sales is always the hardest. And it's not hard because it's rocket science. It's not hard, like intellectually hard. It's not physically hard. It's hard because you don't know because you're just getting started and you don't know what you're doing. And you're having to make mistake after mistake after mistake. I mean, even if you're following a program, you're still making mistakes because it takes time to kind of tease out that message. But it's hard because you have to kind of reframe the way that you think about making mistakes and what you make it mean when you make a mistake or when something doesn't go as planned or when you have an unexpected challenge. A lot of times as kids we're taught that making a mistake is something to be embarrassed about, or if something doesn't go as planned it means you were unprepared or whatever. It's all of these negative things, these negative judgments that we place on ourselves, when the reality is if you're making mistakes and if you're encountering unexpected challenges, that means that you're growing. Because if you weren't growing, you would be in your little comfort zone and like nothing bad would ever be happening, right? And so if you can kind of reframe that in your head from, oh, what does this say about me that I'm making mistakes or I'm putting something out there or it doesn't work yet or all these things, uh, instead seeing it as, okay, this means like it is working. It means that I am getting closer to what I want to do, and building up that muscle of resilience is hard. And, you know, the repeat over and over again, the clients that I see that have the most success are those that are able to build resilience, and they don't kind of get phased, or they don't get sucked into the drama triangle when things don't go their way, and they're like, okay, that didn't happen, I'm not going to make it mean something negative about myself, I'm just going to kind of see like what's next.
Yeah, there's a certain objectivity
Hmm.
you have. Now, I do think, many of us will fall into the like, oh my,
Sure.
and oh dear, and what happened, and
Totally.
there'll be that self condemnation on ourselves. But then it's like we dust ourselves up, we
Yeah.
get back in the game, get back in the arena, we go back and we do it again. What have you noticed?
Hmm.
Because there is a shift in mindset from a business owner who is up to six figures and even six
Hmm.
figures and higher. But what's the $1 million mindset? Like, what
Mm.
did you notice needed to shift for you on how you maybe thought about yourself, how you thought about your business, what your
Hmm.
relationship with money was? What are some of the things that helped you
Yeah.
get to, being someone who says, all right, I warrant, I deserve, and yes, I can, be a multiple seven-figure dollar business and earn that
Yeah.
revenue.
I think that for a long time, so before I was able to cross the $1 million mark, I was making money, but I wasn't meeting my revenue goals. And one of the big reasons why I felt like eventually I realized I was stuck is because I was I was one of those people who was constantly beating myself up, and I had confused personal accountability with beating yourself up, right?
Mm,
And I'm a big fan of personal accountability. I talk about it a lot. And the reality is that if you're looking to scale from six figures to seven figures, or from 0 to 6 figures or whatever, it's a different level of personal accountability, right? There's one level of personal accountability to get you to six figures. It's a whole other ball game to get to seven. There is no blaming other people. There is no being hard on yourself. There is no like getting sucked in for too long to think, oh, this is never going to happen, why me, da da da. There's just no time for that. And it's almost like it's like it's such a different paradigm shift. It's not to go from 100K to $1 million. It's not just a 10x mindset shift. It's like 1,000x mindset shift. And and figuring out how to hold yourself personally accountability without falling into the like self blame, like blaming yourself, blaming other people. Like it's hard, right? Like it's so much easier if something goes wrong to be like, that was my team member's fault, that was my colleague's fault, it was the audience's fault because they just didn't understand how awesome my product was. You can come up with a million different things, but it's like there's no time for that.
yeah. What I'm also hearing you say is it's almost like below that amount, like especially if you're in that solopreneur, like up
Hmm.
until you get the six figure and you start building a team around you, everything feels personal. Whether they
Oh yeah.
buy or don't buy, we take it personally.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, when we get to that next level, there is nothing personal about it. It's just business. Like
Yeah.
so again, we're very objective. The first one, like we're subjective, we take it personally. And
Yes.
the second, when we get to that next mindset, we need to be very objective and it's just business. And I
Hmm.
think about even if you work in an organization, like if you work for a company, you might be, as in your business, you might have employees, the same
Oh,
idea.
yes.
Like they could be
Mhm.
blaming, well, Caitlin did this and Caitlin did that, or we didn't do this. And so didn't execute on that. And that's like that employee mindset.
Mhm.
And that's that same as that solopreneur. And where we need to move to is the leader, right? So
Mhm.
if you're in the self-employed business, you're going from solopreneur or entrepreneur to business owner. Like that's a different mindset. And
Mhm.
if you're working for someone, it's like you're going from employee to leader. Like with or without the title, you can show up and demonstrate leadership by taking ownership, taking accountability, being responsible, getting the bulls by the horns and just going for it and doing it. Right. So I think
Yeah.
that shift that you're talking about really can relate to both contexts, wherever, if you're in organization or outside.
And it's important too that as you're doing that, as you're being a leader in your company and you're being you're taking ownership, having personal accountability, you're then setting that example for your employees,
Yeah.
right? And so you can't, like, I talk to some entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, well, like my employees, they just don't, or my team members, they just don't take ownership of it. It just seems, it's like, well, are you? Because like you're here blaming your employees. So like that
Yep.
tells me that's something. And
Yep.
it's like you are setting the tone as the leader. And again, that's when we get into that place where like you can't be out there throwing tantrums, doing this and that. Like you're driving the boat. Like
Yeah.
you don't have time.
Absolutely. 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 Throughout this experience, what have you noticed? So we talk a lot about brilliant difference here,
Mm,
and we define it as, it comes in two parts. The first part is your brilliance, which is these unique gifts and talents and skills and passions that you've been given, coupled with, because often we can get so in ourselves in that route that it's like, oh, this is who I am. Or either we take it egotistically or we take everything so personally. It's like
mhm.
our ego gets bruised because we're so invested in our identity. And the difference part is it's not about us. You've been given these gifts, you've been given these specific talents, but they're here to make a difference, a meaningful impact for you through your business scale with success. So when you think about your brilliant difference, so these unique gifts and talents that you have that are here to create meaning, add value, deliver an impact, so that kind of coupling for you, what have you noticed about what your brilliant difference is?
Yeah.
Yeah, how is it showing up today?
So when I think about my brilliant difference, I think back to when I was a little girl, and my dad. One of his favorite phrases was, "Can't is not a word in my vocabulary."
Mm.
So my sister and I would be, getting ready for school, trying to tie our shoes, kind of like flailing on the floor, and he's like, "We need to go, like it's go time," and we'd be like, we can't, but I can't tie my shoe, but I can't, do this or that. And he would just very flat, he'd be like, can't is not a word in my vocabulary. And he wouldn't tell us what to do. He wouldn't tell us how to work out that problem. He was just like, can't is not an option here. And so, and whenever he would say that, then we'd be like, okay, well, I guess we need to figure this out. And it was so ingrained in us. Even I remember one time my sister, my little sister, when she was in the second grade, she got in trouble at school because she had a spelling test and one of the words was can't. And she told the teacher, she's like, that's not a real word. Can't is not a word. But she was, dead serious. And the teacher was like, excuse me, that is a word. She's like, no, can't is not a word. And so then, my parents had to explain kind of what had happened there. But I see that show up in my business every day now. I see it show up as I grew my business, and I see it continuing to show up for me in the future. Is how do we go from why you can't to how you can? And when it comes to thinking about kind of like my bigger purpose or the bigger impact that I want to have in the world, that's essentially what I'm doing through my programs, through my coaching. I'm helping people figure out, how do you go from why you can't to how you can? Because there are always a million reasons why we can't do something, right? And the only way we're going to get to where we want to go is if we shift our attention away from all the reasons why we can't, because they're always there, into how we can. Okay, so we know why you can't. Now let's figure out how you can, right?
I love it. I love it. So what I'm taking away from that
Mm-hmm.
is Caitlin helps us make the impossible possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so this whole idea of we can always look at what's not working. And you said it earlier too about entrepreneurs needing resilience. And
Mm-hmm.
what I also heard you say is resourcefulness and figuring
Mm-hmm.
things out. Right. So these are all things that I'm going to, I want to say to you, like, these are all the things that through the story you shared with us today is like, that's what's helped you be successful. And that's how you bring your brilliant difference and continue to bring more of it. Because one, it helps everyone outside of you looking at you saying, okay, that's what she did. That's how she did it. And making can't go from can. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to also just for, as you're listening to this episode and or watching it, I want you to think about what Caitlin just has said. oftentimes our brilliant difference does show up when we were a kid.
Mhm.
And, that's the first story that Caitlin went to, that you went to really, where did it start? Where did it come from? And then connected it to your purpose and the passion of the work that you do today. So again, as you're listening, use Caitlin's story as an inspiration point to uncover and tap into your brilliant difference by go back, 25, 35, 45 years, however long that is. And it might be something that was happening to you when you were 6 or 7 years old, like Caitlin. Time shoes.
Yeah.
I can't. Oh yeah, let's figure it out. I love that. As we wind down here, is there anything, one that you think, another, piece of advice that you'd love to offer our listeners? That's one, and then two, for we're going to have anything that you share with us here in our show notes. But is there anything that you would love to direct people to learn more about you, learn more about your work, and how they can go from launching to selling?
Sure. So the one thing that I'd really like to leave people with as they think about, growing and scaling, starting, growing, scaling a business is that something can be challenging and fun. And I think that a lot of times we get kind of stuck in thinking like, oh, building a business sounds hard or growing it sounds hard. And guess what? It is hard, but it's also so much fun because you're literally making money by helping other people solve problems, by solving problems for yourself. And so I really do invite you to think about business as challenging and fun. Um, and then if you would like to hear more from me, the best place to go is really my website, caitlinbacher.com. I have a free masterclass on that website, which is how to generate launch size revenue without launching. I also have a podcast, Scale with Success, the podcast, that is on my website as well.
Fantastic. So tune in, check Caitlin out. Caitlin, I so appreciate you and thank you so much for spending time with us, talking us through what the difference between launch versus selling, the 3 points around building genuine connections. I love those. The mindset we need, and hearing your story and the pivot point that changed everything for you and your business. So thank you so much for being here. And for those of you listening or watching, for tuning in on the Your Brilliant Difference podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.